I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Ladies recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to H.R. 2189, the so-called Law Enforcement Innovate to De-Escalate Act. Law enforcement officers serve a critical role in promoting public safety. That is why we must give them the tools to do their job effectively and safely. But contrary to what so many of my colleagues have been told, H.R. 2189 does nothing to help law enforcement officers. In fact, it would put our law enforcement officers and so many others in great danger by giving dangerous people easy access to serious weapons. By changing the definition of firearm, H.R. 2189 would create dangerous new loopholes in the Gun Control Act and National Firearms Act, exempting so-called less than lethal weapons from our gun laws, including those that require firearms to be traceable, detectable by security equipment, and not available to prohibited purchasers like felons, fugitives, and domestic abusers. These exemptions would allow these weapons, which can be deadly, to be sold to anyone, including dangerous people, without having to undergo a background check. Law enforcement has no need for this exemption. They are already exempt from many gun laws and already use all kinds of weapons, including those covered by this bill, without any legal obstacles. In fact, police departments in all 50 states already use these tasers. We also know that state and local corrections officers are armed with tasers within prisons and jails across the country. Let's be clear. This bill is designed to increase civilian purchases of these weapons. And we know this because it includes an exemption from the NFA excise tax, which law enforcement already does not pay. More than 3 years ago, prosecutors and legal experts at the Department of Justice sounded the alarm when they reviewed a prior version of this bill. These experts all agreed that this bill would endanger our officers and communities, and I quote, weakening their efforts to keep weapons out of the hands of dangerous persons, end quote. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives warned, and I'll quote again, these weapons could be used against law enforcement, security personnel, or the public, creating an increased risk of harm to public safety. They also would not be traceable if used in a crime, end quote. If this bill were truly about helping law enforcement, Republicans would have taken this feedback from the DOJ and the ATF and revised this bill, but they didn't. The bill before us today poses the same risk to public safety. Many of my colleagues share my commitment to making sure law enforcement has all the tools that they need to keep themselves and our community safe. Some of them co-sponsored this legislation because they initially believed this bill was a genuine effort to do that. They have since learned the truth. Some joined Congressman Thompson's amendment, which would ensure that less than lethal weapons are not considered firearms only when they are used by law enforcement officers acting in their official capacity, addressing the alleged purpose of this legislation without creating a dangerous loophole. And Republicans rejected that amendment. Now that these members who once co-sponsored this bill see that this bill does not help law enforcement and will, in fact, endanger police and many others, they are now opposing this bill. We must continue providing the resources and support that strengthen officer and community safety, not undermine them by removing the safeguards that keep weapons out of the hands of dangerous and violent criminals. We need to be preventing violence. I urge all of my colleagues to join me in opposing this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Lady reserves.